What happens after trust breaks? Trust does not vanish all at once. It fractures, quietly at first, in moments so small they barely register. A delayed response, a promise hedged instead of kept, a signal that feels different than expected. And once those fractures appear, the system never hears silence the same way again. To understand why this matters, we have to look beyond collapse and focus on aftermath. Breaking trust does not end the system. It changes how every participant behaves inside it. Markets still function. Institutions still operate. But the rules feel different, even if none were rewritten. After trust breaks, assumptions dissolve. Participants stop filling gaps with confidence. They demand clarity where faith once existed. Liquidity becomes cautious. Commitments shorten. Decisions that were once automatic now require verification. The early signs are subtle. Spreads widen slightly. Timing becomes conservative. Flexibility narrows. The system grows quieter, not calmer. Movement continues, but hesitation lingers beneath every action. This is a reveal beginning to surface. Trust is not just emotional. It is structural. It determines how much friction exists between intention and action. When trust weakens, friction increases everywhere at once. Institutions respond defensively. Safeguards multiply. Documentation thickens. Redundancy replaces efficiency. These changes feel prudent, even necessary. But they also reshape the system's rhythm. Speed slows. Adaptation stiffens. Markets reflect this shift immediately. Prices embed doubt. Volatility appears in unexpected places. Not explosive, but persistent. The system is no longer reacting to events alone. It is reacting to memory. The early tension forms here. Trust once allowed the system to move smoothly through uncertainty. Without it, uncertainty feels heavier. Every decision carries more weight. Every signal is questioned. What happens after trust breaks is not chaos. It is caution. And caution, sustained long enough, changes everything. As caution settled in, the system began to reorganize itself around doubt. Relationships that once relied on assumption now required verification. Counterparties demanded more collateral. Time horizons shortened. Flexibility gave way to protection. This shift altered incentives everywhere. Acting quickly no longer earned advantage. Waiting did. Conservatism became rational. Innovation slowed not because ideas disappeared, but because trust had once carried them forward, and now it was gone. Institutions adapted defensively. Processes multiplied. Checks replaced judgment. Every decision was filtered through the question of exposure. What could go wrong if trust failed again? That question lingered beneath even routine actions. Markets reflected this change with precision. Liquidity existed, but it was conditional. Available, but only at a price. Spreads widened not out of fear, but out of memory. The system remembered how quickly confidence could fracture, and it priced that memory into everything. The reveal deepened. Trust had not been a soft advantage. It had been a lubricant. Without it, friction increased across the entire system. Transactions took longer. Coordination weakened. Efficiency declined quietly, persistently. This was the early conflict sharpening. The system was safer in one sense, less exposed to sudden betrayal. But it was also heavier, less responsive, more rigid. Trust had once allowed speed without vulnerability. Now vulnerability was avoided at the cost of momentum. Participants felt the difference immediately. Nothing was broken. Everything worked. But it worked differently. Each action required more effort. Each outcome carried more uncertainty. Trust had not vanished. It had become scarce. And scarcity, once introduced, reshapes behavior more deeply than crisis ever could. The emotional peak arrived when the system realized that rebuilding trust was not a technical problem. It was a behavioral one. Rules could be rewritten. Capital could be added. Transparency could be increased. Yet none of it restored what had been lost automatically. Participants tested one another cautiously. Small commitments replaced large ones. Exposure was granted briefly, then withdrawn. Every interaction became provisional. Trust was no longer assumed forward. It had to be earned backward, one interaction at a time. This shift reshaped power inside the system. Those who could wait gained advantage over those who needed speed. Institutions with excess capital dictated terms. Smaller players absorbed higher costs. The system did not collapse, but it stratified. Access depended on credibility. Markets reflected this fragmentation. Liquidity clustered instead of flowing freely. Some areas remained active, others thinned dramatically. Risk was not evenly distributed. It pooled where confidence remained and vanished where it did not. The conflict was no longer about fear of collapse. It was about fear of exposure. Participants remembered how quickly trust could disappear, and they guarded against repeating that vulnerability. Cooperation gave way to caution. Coordination became conditional. This was the heart of the tension. Trust could not be commanded back into existence. It had to reemerge organically. And organic recovery takes time, far more time than systems accustomed to speed prefer. Pressure mounted as the cost of caution became visible. Opportunities were missed. Capital sat idle. Growth slowed. The system was protected, but constrained by its own memory. The buildup was complete. The question was no longer whether trust mattered. It was whether the system could function indefinitely without it. And history suggests systems without trust do not break loudly. They grind slowly. The resolution came not from a single reform or declaration, but from consistency. Trust did not return because the system promised it would behave better. It returned because, over time, behavior changed in observable ways. Commitments were honored even when it was inconvenient. Transparency replaced reassurance. Losses were acknowledged rather than disguised. Small actions accumulated into patterns, and patterns slowly softened memory. Trust did not surge back. It crept. The climax of this recovery was subtle. Participants began extending horizons again. Agreements lasted longer. Liquidity stayed present under mild stress. The system did not forget what had happened, but it stopped reacting to it reflexively. The resolution reshaped priorities. Trust was no longer treated as background condition. It became an asset to be protected deliberately. Institutions recognized that credibility mattered as much as capital, that speed without trust created fragility, that efficiency without confidence invited breakdown. What endured was a deeper understanding. Trust is not restored by stability alone. It is restored by behavior under pressure, by how systems act when outcomes are uncertain and incentives are misaligned. The system did not return to what it was before trust broke. It became something else, slower to believe, quicker to verify, more cautious, but more honest about risk. And that transformation carried its own form of resilience, because trust, once broken and rebuilt, does not disappear quietly again. It leaves a memory, and memory, handled well, becomes wisdom. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. What happened